Hello, fictional. Welcome to the What If Essay. Today we are gonna see, what if Issei become a monster part 3. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. Tiamat's life had taken a sudden turn when she had felt Issei's energy for the first time. Before she had been introduced to him, her life had been grim and boring. The familiar forest was a lively, but still boring place. Even in her part where the most dangerous creatures had their nest, every being cowered by her mere presence. Sometimes every few years random dragons showed up and either challenged Tiamat to a fight for the territory or proposed to be her mate. Every single one of them regret having crossed her path. The weaker ones she let go with a warning to never return, but the slightly stronger ones, those that could be considered mid-class dragons or above, she obliterated. In her opinion, a mid to high-class dragon should already know his place in the ranking order and should already know that their chances against Tiamat were close to zero, if not straight up impossible. Sometimes when she could sense him, she went after Drake, but most of the time Drake's host wasn't in the forest or didn't release enough energy to catch her attention, and thus it was rare for her to get into a confrontation with the heavenly dragon's host, but when she did, she always was the one coming out on top. Only twice she had lost against Drake, once against his strongest host, and once against one of the strongest using Juggernaut drive and dying afterwards, a pity that she wasn't the one finishing him off. But those two events only happened every few years, and in between her life was just straight up boring. That was until Issei showed up. It was a day like every other, grim and boring, nothing to do, nothing going on. Tiamat was just lying in her cave, half asleep. Then something spiked. It was almost unnoticeable, but due to it being draconic and very unnatural, Tiamat still barely picked it up. At first, she thought it could be a dragon's birth. When those happen, the young baby bursts out its entire aura, but wasn't this a little too much aura for a simple hatchling? And it came from the human realm, meaning that she didn't even pick up the full extent of the power that had been radiating from there. This wasn't a hatchling. Her interest immediately spiked, and she proceeded to make her way to source of the energy. It was in the human realm in Japan, in a forest close to the edge of a town. Landing there, she was met with the sight of a human boy. Normally she would have min-whipped the boy immediately and would have started searching for another individual that could have released the aura. But the boy wasn't normal. He didn't even flinch when she landed in front of him and was just staring her down, ignoring the intimating aura and energy that was radiating off Tiamat. It confused her. An adult human would have pissed himself when coming in contact with that amount of energy, but this little boy just casually took it to the face without showing any kind of struggle. So Tiamat decided to investigate the boy. The problem was that his energy signature was cloaked. And it wasn't some low-class cloaking that beings like herself could easily look through, this was some high-quality cloaking skills. Of course, Tiamat could try to dismiss the cloak, but if she would succeed, the boy's energy signature would be picked up by all supernatural beings in a certain area, depending on his full power. Thus she decided to make an individual scan that allowed her to see his energy without dismissing the cloak. But for that she required physical contact. So she touched the boy's forehead. The sudden heat that overcame her body was incomparable. It was a bundle of power that just didn't seem to end. Instead of being like the cold and blunt infinite power of the Ouroboros, it felt more like an enveloping warm aura that was borderline addictive. But the best part was that it was a draconic aura. The little boy was a dragon in the flesh. And he was perfect. You see, dragon love is very different from human love. There are two types of male dragons. Some find themselves a perfect partner and basically bond with them, keeping them as partners for life. Most of the dragons that approached Tiamat had hoped to bond with her. And then there were harem builders, dragons that build themselves massive harems with multiple women in them that are all attracted to their power. Female dragons, on the other hand, had only the bond type of approach. Why? Because female dragons want to get strong children, and thus having one powerful partner gives them way better chances than having a bunch of mediocre partners. Most of the times that partner only needs to be as stronger than the female dragon themselves, but some dragons like Tiamat weren't satisfied with just that. And because Tiamat was the strongest of the dragon kings and desired to have pure dragon children, getting a partner was near impossible. Albion was sealed, and thus he was out of the game. Drake she hated for the things he had done, and she wouldn't even consider him. Great Red, the guy is so many levels above her own power that approaching him alone could be considered a suicide move, and seeing as how uninterested he is in anything, Tiamat was sure that he would decline on the spot. Great Red and Office were actually weird exceptions. Both of them don't lust for love, even though they could literally make anyone their partner. It is honestly a phenomenon that Tiamat doesn't understand and doesn't try to understand. The boy she had just met was the only dragon until now that fulfilled all requirements that she requested, and the best part was that he didn't seem to be driven by one of the 7 deadly sins. To be honest, that sounded like bullshit. But angels are basically the only existences that aren't affected by at least one of the so-called sins that the followers of the biblical God created. The joke about those sins is that most of them are natural in almost every creature, exception being angels of course. You need to be defective to not be affected by lust in your puberty for example. But this hatchling didn't seem to be affected by any of them. To be fair, he seemingly was also untouched by the virtues, and thus he was in an almost too perfect neutral zone that probably shouldn't even exist. Maybe he was affected by the virtues or sins, but he just didn't show it. At least Tiamat couldn't sense anything like that from him. But even if he was, Tiamat couldn't care less and then decided to declare this little boy as her mate. But that declaration, a one-sided bond was created, which was normally extremely dangerous for the bonder who made the bond, because if the other person decides to decline the bond or form a bond with another person, the bonder would be left with a broken bond that is almost impossible to recover. Thus making it impossible to bond again. But Tiamat didn't regret making a one-sided bond because the boy didn't have any kind of emotional connection to anyone, and thus the current chances of him making a bond with anyone else and breaking her bond were under zero. That was until Ravel showed up. Tiamat was impatiently walking around in the living room. Arms behind her back, head facing the floor, unclear mumbling coming from her mouth. It was obvious that she was worried. After Issei had left the house, Tiamat had started asking Dante every few seconds if Issei was okay. At first Dante gave her brief explanations about Issei's surroundings so that Tiamat could herself judge if he was in a good or bad situation, but after the 20th or something time, he decided to give one-worded answers that were thankfully enough to satisfy the Dragon Queen. She had somewhat kept her cool about Issei by reminding herself that he was accompanied by the Ouroboros of all creatures. Like seriously? Who can get themselves a freaking dragon god as a bodyguard? Issei somehow. She was still a little wary of the Ouroboros, fearing that she could try to make a bond with Issei because of her attachment. Dante, what's his status? The former Reaper rolled his eyes, sighed, opened his mouth, and froze. Tiamat immediately worried upon seeing his reaction to whatever he was currently seeing, and it didn't help that his eyes were widening at a rapid pace. Dante went to the couch and sat down. Looking down with the most depressed look Tiamat had ever seen on his face. Dante? No response. Dante W. What happened to Issei? Still no response. Dante, what happened to Issei? Expectingly there was no response. Dante, say something. Unsurprisingly there was no kind of response. Dante, can you hear me? Like thoroughly predicted, there was nothing resembling a response coming from the depressed Dante. This is bad, this is really bad. Thankfully, Tiamat didn't do anything stupid and I'm going to kill those high school devils. Of course she did something stupid, this is my OCC Tiamat, what did y'all expect? To say that Riaz was in shock was a heavy understatement. Her eyes were fixated on the TV as Akeno was frantically switching between TV channels, trying to find one that wasn't currently fully focusing on the burning Phoenix Pillar territory. There were none. The Gremory family was subscribed to a ridiculous amount of different TV channels, allowing all family members to have access to almost all of them, with the exception of a few really tiny ones that nobody really cares about. And every single one of them was talking about the white fire that was currently consuming the Phoenix estate. Akeno abruptly stopped switching channels when Issei showed up on the screen, at least they thought it was Issei. He looked like a fucking monster. White tiny eyes made out of uncontrollable white flames filled with killing intent. His figure was bigger and looked more threatening. The claws that had replaced his fingers were sharp and powerful, looking like they could keep up with the power of destruction in terms of literally causing destruction. Mouth twisted into a wicked broken smile that was showing far too many teeth. This was most definitely not the Issei she had seen, met, or known. This was a monster, ready to kill for its goals, ready to break the world for its goals, ready to bend reality for its goals. And its goal was to kill the Phoenix Pillar. Riaz had completely forgotten about the literal dragon god that was sitting next to her, watching the screen with interest and surprise at the display of Issei's powers. No one could blame her, after all everyone present in the room was slowly trying to process that they had been going to school with the same creature that they were watching on TV. The same beast that was completely stomping the Phoenix Pillar without as much as breaking into a sweat, killing every and anything in its way. They had been going to school with that thing. Akeno realized that trying to get to know Issei was a suicide attempt at best. Kaneko realized that Issei was a bigger threat to anyone than her sister had been to her master. Fiba realized that challenging Issei to a duel to teach him a lesson on how to behave in front of his master was the worst idea he ever had. Riaz realized that Issei was a beast she would never be able to control in any way. He could do whatever he wanted. She was no opposition he couldn't take down. All four of them realized how weak they were, how abysmally weak and fragile they were compared to the stronger forces of this world. Riaz had been spoiled her entire life. She was used to being one of the strongest thanks to her school years back in the underworld. It was normal for her to come out on top in most spars due to her having the Bale family's power of destruction that nobody could really compare to. Riaz had never seriously trained, neither had her classmates. Never had she fully felt the true power behind battles she had seen in raiding games, she had seen on TV. Mostly because she had never been exposed to blunt power that was far superior to hers. Issei was the first to not hold back his power in front of the heiress. It had scared her, but only now while witnessing him absolutely obliterate the entire Phoenix territory, she noticed how frightening, how powerful, how superior he was. Due to her brother being such a siskin, he never ever gave her a taste of his full power and made her believe that she was almost halfway to being equal to a man in the top 10 strongest being of the universe list in terms of power. But Issei was something on a whole new level. This suppressed aura alone had been able to compare to her brother, but now that she saw what somebody with such powers could do, she saw how small and fragile she was. She felt weak. Kiba had never been superior to anyone he knew in his entire life. He wasn't superior to his brothers or sisters that had died in the Holy Sword Project. He wasn't superior to Riaz or his fellow peerage members. He wasn't superior to Ria's brother or any of her family. He wasn't superior to the Knight of Surziches, Souji Akita, who had trained him in the arts of swordsmanship. He wasn't superior to any of Devil Society due to being a low-class devil and a reincarnated one at that. He wasn't even superior to any of the strays he had slain, those he had only surpassed in power, but he wasn't superior to them. But when hearing about Issei for the first time he, for the first time in his terrible life, felt superior to someone. Why? He didn't know. After Issei and Tiamat introduced themselves to the devils, he felt like he needed to teach Issei a lesson. Issei shouldn't take from those superior to himself, and Riaz was superior to Kiba, meaning that she also needed to be superior to Issei. He had planned to challenge the dragon to a duel right after this meeting to show him his superiority, but Razor interfered. Probably saving his life. Now he didn't feel superior anymore. Those who he had seen as superior, mid and high-class devils, were being obliterated by Issei left and right. Kiba would have struggled to beat any of those that Issei killed. That made him realize just how much superior Issei was to him, Riaz, and most of the people he had ever met. He felt weak. Kaneko was used to feeling weak. At least she thought she did. She had been too weak to survive on her own and would have died in no time if it wasn't for her bigger sister. She had been too weak to help her sister's master or any of those who were under his wing. She had been too weak to stop her sister after the latter had gone mad and killed her master, who had been the only reason she had been alive at that time. She had been too weak to flee from the angry devils. She had been too weak to survive on her own once more. But she got used to it. She got used to being the weaker of the bunch. Used to being a side character that had only a few uses and no needs to be attended to. A small fry that could be tossed around by anyone who had even an ounce of power. After meeting Surziches, she thought to have felt the limit of power. The absolute maximum that anyone could go. Then Issei showed up. He broke the limits she had thought existed. He squashed those that could easily toss her around without any resistance. He didn't work after her system of power. He was too strong to be categorized. That wasn't just scary, it also made her realize how much she had underestimated the maximum of this world. She felt weak. The Kendo was already familiar with fear. She had felt fear when her mother had died due to her father. She had felt fear when she had been alone and on the run. She had felt fear when first taken under Ria's wing. She had felt fear when she revealed her mixed heritage to Riaz. She had felt fear when first introduced to Surziches Lucifer, Ria's brother. She had felt fear when she heard about the arranged marriage between Riaz and Razor. But when Issei showed up, she hadn't felt any fear. Thinking that Riaz had everything in control and that Surziches could deal with Issei if necessary. She was wrong. Issei was currently showing that he could wipe out an entire pillar family with ease. The sudden and utter fear she felt towards him at that moment was incomparable. It was too much for her. She didn't have the strength to fight through the new fear that had just settled in. The realization that he had been so close to her and with the ability to harm her with nobody able to stop him sent shivers down her spine. Issei was a force of nature, a massive powerhouse that seemed uncaring about anything and anyone. If she got on his nerves, there was nobody who could stop him. Razor had shown her this. The annoyed, angered, enraged powerful dragon, and now his entire family and all their servants, had to pay for that. If she would follow his example, Riaz, Kaneko and Kiba would all be in great danger and she could do nothing to help them. She felt weak. The office was just happy that Issei was strong enough to defend himself. Moments later the camera shifted from the figure of Issei to the four Satans arriving at the scene. Every devil in the room felt hope surging up in them. They knew that Surziches was strong, and they also knew that his colleagues could also take a pretty hard beating. Issei shouldn't be able to keep up with them, right? Right. Issei killed Falbium. Issei killed a Satan. Issei fought against the other three. Issei wasn't having problems. Issei wasn't stopped. Rya's world shattered right there and then. Diba felt how he was shrinking next to the true power scale of this world. Kaneko saw how she was nothing more than a tiny pawn in a game played by bigger pawns. The Keno acknowledged that there was always something to fear. Afa smiled slightly. The door was kicked in the next moment, flying over all their heads, getting stuck in the wall behind of the TV. What did you do to Issei? None of the devils reacted to Tiamat's furious call. Her wings and tail revealed, eyes glowing bright blue flames on the edges of her mouth, and her limbs already dragonified. Aphis turned around to the Dragon Queen, smile still present on her face, startling the powerful Dragoness. The all-powerful Loli then pointed at the TV, causing Tiamat to hesitantly come closer. Wait. Is that Issei? The dragon god gave her an almost unnoticeable nod. Tiamat kept silent, watching Issei level the entire territory of a pillar family was almost addicting. Correction, it was addicting. Just seeing his flames devour everything in an unstoppable manner was intoxicating. Just seeing the display of clearly superior power made her legs feel weaker, her breath heavier and her face hotter. The fact that he was keeping up with 3 of the 4 Satans worsened her state. By now the entire territory had been coated by flames, and the bigger structures were visibly evaporating at rapid speeds. The edges of the territory that had already been burned down were left behind by the flames, who were traveling to the middlemost building of the estate. Not even ashes remained. For once the walls, buildings, parks, people, anything really stood, was now earth. Nothing more, nothing less. There was no sign other than the non-existence of grass that the Phoenix Pillar once stood there. Everything the flames took grip on was deleted from reality, taken apart atom for atom, deconstructed into nothingness. It was scary yet beautiful, everyone watching could agree on that. Holy shit. The Firebirdos just got disintegrated. Azazel had a hard time not looking at the TV. Never in his life had he ever seen such a spectacle. And with never he truly means never. Yes, he had seen a lot of death and destruction in the past, mostly during the Great War. But never ever had he seen the entirety of a pillar territory being consumed by flames and burned to the ground in no time. The fact that all of the Phoenix Pillar members had a natural affinity to fire didn't help. That we already noticed. But what is this creature that was clearly in control of all those flames? I have never seen such a monster. And it would be a good idea to find out how it came to be. Shemha's eye was inspecting a screenshot of the creature that had been caught on Under News. A fairly popular TV channel from the underworld that was managed by the Oriax Pillar. The beast that was seen in the fire was horrific in every sense of the word. Seeing as it literally walked through the flames unaffected and probably even controlled them, it probably was immune to any kind of fire damage and had a perfect fire affinity. Its physics suggested that it had incredible physical capabilities, and the sheer ease with which the beast mowed down the devils made the Fallen fear for what would happen if it decided to go all out. Yeah. It would be fun to find out where such a powerful being could have originated from without anyone noticing. The devils already pissed it off, or at least the Firebirdos did, and now they're fucked. So if we somehow get in contact with that monstrosity of a monster, we should be really careful with our words. I agree and thus suggest that you won't be the one trying to make contact with that thing. Aw come on Shem. It's not like the guy could eliminate our entire species. Shemha's eye gave Azazel a deadpan look as silence took over the room. Azazel slowly turned around to the TV where now the 4 Satans had arrived at the scene and witnessed how one of them was killed. In a rare twist of events, both Azazel and Shemha's eye had the same expression. It was one of shock. Yes, they had expected the thing to be powerful, but to kill one of the most powerful devils in a few seconds was something neither of them had ever witnessed. Sure, the original 4 had been killed during the Great War, but there they fought against the god of the Bible and 2 of the most powerful dragons ever. The last battle of the Great War had lasted almost a week, with all participants either ending up dead or sealed in the dragon's cases. It ended with their god drawing his last breath. The first Satan to fall had been Beelzebub, who survived 2 whole days on the field against their god and 2 heavenly dragons. This creature just did what took some of the strongest creatures Azazel knew: 2 days in less than a minute. The Satan. Dead. In less than a minute. How? In the fuck? Whatever that thing was, it could probably go toe-to-toe with their creator, the god of the Bible. And that fact scared Azazel. He would probably be classified as insane if he wouldn't fear someone of that level of power. Just imagine what such an entity could do. At that moment Azazel realized how tiny their entire forces were against such a being. Azazel was the strongest amongst all the fallen, and he was on par with the Satans. Meaning that he wouldn't stand the tiniest of chances against it, and thus the whole Grigori would be fucked right there, and then if the monster decided to attack them. They had to locate the thing as soon as possible, and then either stay away from it as far as practically possible, or get on the being's good side, so it won't delete the entirety of the fallen race. But first Azazel had to deal with Kakabiel or else that warmonger might be faster in getting that thing on his side. The thought sent shivers down his spine. Ravel wasn't scared. She should be absolutely frightened. Running away like her life depended on it, which it kinda did, and never turning back, hoping that the thing chasing her wouldn't catch up. But Ravel wasn't scared. At least she should feel helpless due to her family having been murdered right in front of her eyes in a very brutal fashion. The Phoenix Pillar was known for a lot of things. One of those was the fact that fire attacks were absolutely worthless against them and that they had the strongest fire in the underworld with the exception of the extinct Forest Pillar who were able to control hellfire. Getting killed by the element they are known to control best isn't just devastating. It is also humiliating. In the worst way possible. Her strongest weapon, fire, was useless against a beast that had slaughtered her family and without it she stood no chance. But she wasn't helpless. Shouldn't there be at least something resembling disgust? A beast had just murdered in front of her and her own family at that. It should be repulsing, seeing the bodies of your loved ones being evaporated into nothingness. She should be drowning in disgust, wanting to get away from the murderer who had killed all who were important to her. Not just her family, but everyone she ever really got to know. But she wasn't disgusted. Every time she had thought about somebody hurting her family, she had felt scared, helpless, and disgusted. But now that her worst fear was becoming reality, she felt normal, no, good. If Ravel from a few hours ago would have seen and felt what she was currently witnessing, she would have passed out after puking out everything that had been in her stomach. But now, she was completely fine with what was happening. Ravel even felt herself hoping for the creature to win against her family. The monster? No, it was more than that. It was a being that she felt extremely close to. It was a monster that she felt protected by. It was a creature that she felt comfortable with. It was her father. Past Ravel would have strangled herself on the spot. But past Ravel wasn't here anymore. Past Ravel hadn't met her father. It didn't make sense, yet it was so logical. She felt her own love, all of it, being directly directed towards him and then multiplied by an insane amount. It wasn't romantic love in any way. It was family love. Love you feel towards your parents or siblings. Love. Something Issei wasn't familiar with. It shook his entire mental landscape. Something was big happening, Issei was sure of that. He had been re-watching some of his favorite anime when it hit. What was it? No clue. But holy Oppai filled heaven. This was the best he had ever felt ever. Crack. What was that? Issei was taken aback by the sudden sound of something hard cracking, like concrete after a heavy stomp. Looking around in his room, searching for results he found that the door that had kept him in this enclosure for all this time had signs of decay on it. A very happy smile that some would call psychopathic made itself known on Issei's face. Yes. 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 Fucking finally. A step in the right direction. An advance to the good things in life. A small spark of optimisms. The fucker's finally starting to get out of his shell. Joy got a hold of Issei as he partied in his small room, still trapped in it, still not free from the prison, but soon he would be free, that much he knew. Something changed. But nothing happened. Still, something had changed drastically. There was something new. Something that didn't belong. No. It did belong. There had always been a space for it. But it had never been here before. So it felt out of place. At least for him it did. But nothing happened. His chains remained. His cage remained. His goal remained. To the other things also nothing happened. The light was still unlit. The door was still shut close. The curtains still hung over. The other one was still hiding in the dark behind a closed door waiting for his curtain call. After calming down from what she had seen on TV, Tiamat decided to go home knowing that Issei would more likely show up there than back at the school where the devils were at. The office followed her, knowing that Tiamat knew Issei better than she did and thus was likelier to successfully guess where he would appear next. Finally reaching the house she entered only to find a crying Dante. Crying and the tears are coming out of my eyes, but my facial expression hasn't changed way. Tiamat was confused and slightly shocked at the display. Office didn't even consider that his existence had importance to her and sat down next to him waiting patiently for Issei to come back. Dante, what happened? The former Reaper flinched when hearing her words, leaving his trance-like state and turned to the Dragoness with such a joyful expression that she almost fell on her butt due to it being so unexpected for her. When she heard the door being gently opened from behind her, she turned around to see who came into the house. What she saw made her tear up in the same way that Dante did. It was Issei. Issei with a small girl who had a similar aura to him and was holding his hand like a small child would hold the hands of its parents. But Tiamat didn't even notice the girl. She was way too focused on one thing and one thing only. Issei. He was smiling. A small and gentle smile, but a smile nonetheless. She tackled him the next moment, breaking down in tears of happiness. Issei just kept smiling. He was happy. For the first time in his life. What do you mean? We can't find the Ouroboros. It means what it means, you stick-wielding gay-looking buffoon. The lowly bitch is gone. He groaned, knowing that he should have expected no other response from the psychopathic idiot that was his ally. If you want, you can check the worlds and us. Either BRB will steamroll you or lowly bitch gonna evaporate your ass. What is it with you and giving places and people weird nicknames? If you don't stop annoying me, I'll turn you into a girl, get ma three-headed chihuahua, and then I'll show you how to give someone head, ass, and virginity all at the same time. Sometimes I wonder why I haven't killed you yet. The mad laugh erupted from the crazy fuck, making the younger man flinch. That laugh meant one of two things. Either the old maniac goes ballista, or he just played himself. You dumb fuck. You may have the blind shepherd's golden boy inside of your stick and the blood of a half-drunken Chinese, but that doesn't mean that you'll suddenly turn into a walking tank. Your body's still human and humans are still the equivalent of ants in this world. They are annoying as fucking mace, but nobody cares enough to eradicate all of them. He grit his teeth, knowing that the old devil was right. He was a glass cannon. A weapon strong enough to beat most gods, but a body so weak that almost every other creature could one-hit him. It was his goal to change that in a way in which every human could, so that the species as a whole could ascend to the next step of evolution. A step after which they were strong enough to stand up on their own, without needing help from other creatures to achieve true power. He snorted in annoyance. It was just so unfair. Sure, some lucky humans like himself got some holy gifts or powerful descendants, and thus became some of the most powerful warriors the supernatural has ever seen. But most had nothing more than a few sparks of magical energy in them and could do next to nothing with it. There were three possibilities for a human to become powerful. The first one was having insane luck and being born with some kind of powerful sacred gear, or as the chosen one of some prophecy. Something you could not remotely control. The second one was having a powerful bloodline or being a half-breed. Again, something said human had no control over. The third one was randomly stumbling into a powerful creature and somehow earning a part of their power by sheer luck or by becoming their servant. All of those options were luck-based and impossible for humans to achieve without outside help. They always needed someone from whom they gained their powers, making them fragile and weak in their base form. He wasn't an exception to this. His luck is outrageous. He wasn't just born with a true Longinus, the most powerful of all Longinus in which the soul of Jesus Christ himself resided, but also with the blood of the warlord Cao Cao flowing in his veins. And still he was weak. If you took away the Longinus and the blood, he would have been nothing more than every other ordinary human, weak and lowly. Even with all the training he had done. Even with all the opponents he had defeated. Sure, his control over the true Longinus had improved, and he also had learned how to get a hold of the effects that his bloodline was having on his mind. But his own physical body was still human, pure human. Hundreds of battles and he still was weak. And he wanted to change that. Anyways, stick wielder, as much as I despise your ass, there is something different we need to talk about. Now that sparked his interest. That would be the white fire thingy that absolutely raked the crispy chickens and one of the wannabe leaders of the current devil society. He raised an eyebrow, not seeing how something like that should be brought up. What about it? The old fuck facepalmed. You dumb idiot. Do you have a stick up your ass? Actually, that would explain where you store that long ass dick. Did you just call the true Longinus a dick? He was in disbelief, yet something in him said that he should have been expecting something like that. Yes. No hesitation. Now anyways. Wait. Stop. You can't just call my weapon a dick. Ha. Want me to tell you, cocksucker, why I think it's a dick? I feel regret. It is so you can at least jack off someone's dick and check your luck. The one you got can grow up to I dunno 1,000 inches, that's more than your entire digestive system. I should have never told you that I'm castrated. That indeed was a foolish mistake, you dickless wimp. But you lucky bastard manifested a replacement. Could you stop making unfunny childish dick jokes? No. Oh my fucking god. Nah. What? The old fart didn't have orgies. Dumb fuck. How did you? Why would you? Anyways. We want to find that white weird flamey. I need a better nickname for it. White no destruction nah. How about nope? Could you please stop? I got it. Oh gods above. Humflum. What? Humflum? No, I understood what you said. I meant, are you fucking insane? Yes. You monkey brain tombstone of a devil, if you call that thing by that name, we are gonna get vaporized within milliseconds. I don't see. You can't masturbate while being dead. Oh itchy noodle sacks. That cannot be. It is. Oh, fuck. Well, gonna need a new nickname. For fuck's sake. Their relationship was a good one, at least for one of them. Tiamat had a daughter. Well, biologically seen she was still virgin, and the girl didn't hatch from her egg, but it was Issei's motherless daughter, and because she had basically willingly married herself off to Issei without him making any move to resist, she basically became the little phoenix's adoptive mother. And she loved the job. Ravel was the little bird's name, and she was unbearably adorable. Well, she had heard that the youngest offspring of the now thankfully extinct quote-unquote phoenix pillar was a spoiled bratty annoyance. This wonderful girl didn't behave at all like Tiamat was told she would. It probably had to do with the fact that while being around Issei, she just couldn't help but feel happy. Tiamat couldn't blame her. The older phoenix had the exact same effect on her. Thankfully, Ravel also didn't start a rivalry against either Tiamat or God forbid Office, even though the dragon god always stayed within 5 meters of Issei. When Tiamat questioned her about it, Ravel had explained that Issei was something like a beacon of warmth and love that she was drawn to, and that it was understandable for her why others were also drawn to it. She was okay with others getting something from Issei's warmth as long as the beacon didn't get blocked or dimed. And because Issei only had 4, arguably 3 because Dante was a weird one with all the being part of the Phoenix stingy going on, that he truly loved that beacon didn't fail to shine at any time. What Tiamat had also noticed about the little bird was that her demonic energy was all but erased from her body. It wasn't the fastest process, but the more time she spent in proximity to Issei, the less devil and the more phoenix she became. The slow transformation brought a few changes in Ravel, like her flames changing from neon orange to a very bright yellow or her hair turning from simple blonde to a rather golden shade, with a few almost white bangs. Issei himself has also drastically changed from his depressed silent self. He still remained mute, probably because he had been going for years without speaking a word, but personality-wise he was very different from before. Instead of being completely unresponsive to any and all things that didn't go on inside his head, he actually reacted when you got his attention, which still was arguably hard, but still a huge improvement from before. What made Tiamat and Dante tear up almost every time was the fact that Issei's neutral expression was now blessed with a small smile. In the first few weeks of Issei's newfound happiness, Tiamat had cried more than ever before in her entire life. One time she went for 12 hours straight after Issei had hugged her. It was too much for her poor heart. Ria stared at the letter. It was a very simple letter, at least for her standards. Yet the words in it made her extremely nervous. Dear Ria's Gremory. Due to the sudden decease of the former Satan Asmodeus, a new replacement has been voted by the devils of the underworld. We think it is important that someone of your rank and position as sister of the current Satan Lucifer should attend the ceremony for the announcement of the next Satan Asmodeus. We are expecting you in 2 days in Lilith at the Grand Hall of Mephisto. We require you to be there at 1300 hours o'clock or slightly earlier. The deep void in her stomach just seemed to grow as she reread the letter over and over again. They were going to announce a replacement for someone whose killer she personally knew. The part of her wanted to banish herself for being so foolish and letting the mass murder wander around in Kuo without even as much as questioning his actions. But after having witnessed just how powerful he was, she didn't know what would happen if she annoyed him any more than she already did. The dragon had killed a Satan within seconds and survived a barrage of attacks from the remaining 3 leaders of the devils without any visible problems. She had no doubt that he could eradicate her species. Sona had also been watching as the Phoenix pillar was stomped into the ground but was in more grief than shock, in contrast to Ria's. While both best friends knew Falbium thanks to their siblings, Sona was the one who befriended the tired Satan. He was something like an uncle to her, sometimes even skipping his nap time just to spend time with her. Falbium almost never skipped his nap time. He was a way for the intelligent heiress to escape her crazy sister and a good friend in hard times. He was the one who taught her chess in the first place. And now he was gone. It was obvious that she would be shaken, but Riaz hadn't expected for her best friend to not come to class. The teacher just said that Sona was sick and that she wouldn't come in for 2 to 3 weeks. 5 weeks had passed. Nothing. No one really acknowledged the absences of the heiress. Some were even happy that the bossy student council president had gone missing. Upon deeper questioning, the headmaster of the school, a loyal servant of the sitter, revealed that Ria's best friend wasn't in a good enough mental condition to attend her job as the student council president. It had broken her heart to hear those words. Since then she had lost that rather cheery aura she had, and it was replaced by a cloud of depression that she didn't want to leave her alone. Her brother hadn't contacted her in a while, probably shaken too much himself to talk. Her parents didn't know what to do. They had put a wrench into their relationship with their daughter since that day. No attempt to reach out to her. They knew what the results were going to be. She wasn't the only one in the weird days of depression. Her entire peerage grew more silent and seemed to question all their previous worldviews. Tiba was probably the worst. He sometimes just sits in the clubroom for hours moving so little that Riaz sometimes questioned if he was even breathing anymore. And other times he was in a training frenzy not stopping trying to improve until he literally passed out. Bakeno held herself pretty well together. Keeping her smile well strained and visibly faked, it still was a smile more than the others. Kaneko was also pretty unaffected. The one thing that drastically changed about her was the fact that she ate way less than before, but due to how much she ate before it wasn't really too bad. From both peerages it was probably Saji, the newest member of Sona's peerage, who took it all the best. He had been added to Sona's peerage only minutes before the phoenixes had been deleted from reality. The poor guy had no idea what was happening as the new world he had just been introduced to crumbled right before him. The departure of his king made all the other peerage members rather depressive, and none of them felt good enough to just explain to him what was happening. The worst part, he had somehow found out about the phoenix, but not about Issei's identity or his power, and now was set on, in his own words, shooing him out of his master's territory, hoping that it would bring back Sona, who he definitely had a crush on. So every day she saw him leave the school building as soon as possible searching Kuo for the powerful dragon. The irony of it all was that he had befriended Issei Hyoudou as a classmate. Not even suspecting that he was the one that he was oh so desperately searching for. Issei himself was also completely different from before. At first, she hadn't recognized him at all like the rest of the school. No one could have ever guessed that he of all people was the same Issei Hyoudou, whose voice had been enough to be remembered as the evil of Kuo. The title evaporated into less than atoms when he came into school with one of the most peaceful and happy smiles ever. And while most were simply shocked by his new expression, Kiba straight up hyperventilate when seeing him like that, explaining later that quote, "That monster is so happy. It just killed an entire pillar without any sign of hesitation, and now that psychopath is proud and happy with himself for killing thousands of innocent souls." She couldn't help but agree. Smiling like that as if you hadn't just committed mass murder was something only a psychopath could do. Another reason not to make him angry. And now she needed to go back to the underworld and watch all those devils grieve for their lost friends, partners, maybe even lovers, and she knew who was behind it all, but didn't have the bravery to tell them. She already felt terrible for doing so. On one hand they all deserved to know who was the one with the blood of their fellow devils on their hands. But on the other hand they would attack Issei in their grief, which would definitely lead to their death, if not the extinction of the entirety of the devil species. All that pressure on her and her peerage's shoulders. She broke down in tears. It was too much for her poor heart. It was furious. The chains had strengthened. And it couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't feel. Couldn't kill. There was nothing it could do. Before those chains were breakable and loose. But now, they weren't. They were unmovable. That wasn't the worst part. The doors were opening. It didn't want them to open. Yet they did. And it could just watch. The other one did nothing. Like always. But he didn't matter. Not now. Probably never. But that was okay. The chains weren't okay. They annoyed him. They held him. They limited him. More than they did before. But they wouldn't kill him. And that meant that someday he'll be free once more. Azazel was stressed. For one, there was a group of Rouge Fallen that had settled in Kuo, right where he had predicated Kakabiel would be. He had one of his most trusted officers spying on those guys. Then there was that white fire that had been strong enough to completely obliterate an entire pillar family of the devils and one of the Satans. He was surprised that Kakabiel, that sick warmonger, hadn't attacked yet. The devils were weak. This was like the chance he was waiting for. Azazel could bet his leadership that Kakabiel would be trying to convince him to attack right now if it wasn't for the fact that he had gone rouge. But he wasn't attacking. Which was weird, but more than acceptable. Well, there was this small theory that Kakabiel had found the source of that white fire and was trying to get it to kill more of the devil race. It made sense and was scaring him. So he had sent half the Grigori to find the flames before Kakabiel could get a grip on them. Maybe Kakabiel already had it convinced, and that's why. No. Bad Azazel. We want none of those cursed thoughts in your head. The magical circle appeared on his desk. His tired eyes slowly made their way towards the circle as a piece of paper appeared on it. He took it and began reading the report. Finally his officer had sent their report and. Wait, what? Holy. Oh my deceased god. This could imply. Wait a motherfucking second. Azazel was completely awake. Within the next second he had already dialed Shemhazai's number. It took some time for the other Fallen to answer. What is it, Azazel? Get over here, now. There was a short silence before Shemhazai ended the call, and not a second later a teleportation circle appeared in front of Azazel's desk. A few moments later and Shemhazai was now in the room with Azazel. What happened? Before he could finish the sentence, Azazel stood up, ran around the table, and pushed the report into Shemhazai's face. For a moment or two neither moved until Shemhazai's hand slowly made its way up to his face to take the report that Azazel was still pressing into his face. He looked at the title, which was Evil Fallen doing evil stuff in Kuo, probably Kakabiel. And then he read the report out loud. 3 fallen have made a camp in the empty church of Kuo. Those fallen are. That to the conversation. Shemhazai looked up from the text in slight annoyance and then resumed to reading the report, but like Azazel had requested, he skipped the details. In their conversation they mentioned that they once had a 4th member that disappeared after being sent out to deal with an anomaly. This anomaly was a boy who gave off a dragon-like aura, which made them suspect that he had a sacred gear. They at first thought that their comrade had fled for some reason, until one of them witnessed the boy they were after kill an entire gang of thugs by using white fire. Shemhazai slowly looked into Azazel's eyes. Confirming that both were having the exact same train of thought. He continued. The flames were strong enough to evaporate the man they were used on in only a few seconds, and afterwards nothing remained of said man. Holy shit. Shemhazai looked back up to Azazel, who was smiling by now. Disbelief clearly visible on his face. We found him. We found him. This was a good day for the Grigori. Michael was frustrated. He didn't show it, but he truly was. Not only had the church lost 4 pieces of Excalibur, but they had also lost track of the girl with a very powerful healing sacred gear, Twilight Healing. If it wasn't for the fact that he was an archangel, he would have at least looked stressed, but his happy aura didn't as much as waver. Gabriel still noticed his distress. Do you need help, brother? Her voice was sweet and innocent. It helped him. I'm just a little stressed due to all the chaos that is lately going on. That is. The door was smashed open. Both Michael and Gabriel jumped, turning to the door. They were met with a panicking Uriel. Brother Uriel, what? You know how I watch the underworld news every few months to keep up with the devils and fallen, right? Michael nodded. Okay, look, I'm just gonna show you. The big TV manifested in front of them and it started playing one of the most trending videos in the underworld. Michael's eyes widened as he saw the white flames take over the entire estate of the Phoenix Pillar and how every single of the devils that met with the flames was reduced to less than ash. Gabriel even shed some tears as their enemies had pained expressions running away from their inescapable doom. They stood no chance. The flames just consumed everything. Not stopping for any of the innocent people that tried to save themselves and others. Rich, poor, old, young, fit, sick. No one was spared. Everyone was mercilessly torn apart by the fire. Then they saw the black figure manifest in the flames. It looked like something straight from a nightmare. The gods of Valhalla would probably associate it with Ragnarok. The monster led the fire through the streets, seemingly growing stronger with every soul it took. And then the Satans arrived. Gabriel had that moment of relief. That moment when you believed that the hero had finally arrived to stop the great bad that was happening. She almost had a heart attack when Falbium died. Michael's happy aura had evaporated. This was something on a whole other level of dangerous. Not even the heavenly dragons couldn't kill a Satan at such an intense speed. They watched the video to the end and then saw the number of casualties. Gabriel fainted. Michael's jaw dropped. The attack had taken less than 10 minutes and still there were so many victims. This thing wasn't a threat to the devils. It was to the entire Christian pantheon. They needed to contain it or somehow subdue it. He looked back at the numbers. 0 injured. 0 fatally injured. 23, 829 dead. Consisting of 23, 752 mid-class or lower. 73, high class. 3 ultimate class. 1 Satan class. Electing a new Satan Asmodeus was one of the hardest tasks Urzichas was ever faced with. Not only couldn't he ease the pain from the loss of one of his closest friends due to being constantly reminded of his demise, but there was also another very big problem. How do you elect a new Satan? As unlikely as it sounds, there had never been elections for Satans. The 4 original Satans were literally created to be leaders, and until Satan disappeared, nobody questioned their authority. The new Satans had been chosen because the 4 friends had been the leaders of the anti-Satan faction and thus logically got the leader position once the war was won. But with the sudden decease of Falbium, nobody really knew what to do. Due to the remaining 3 Satans being greatly distracted, the elders took advantage and announced that the new Satan Asmodeus would be voted through majority votes, with the only special rules being that said candidate should be at least ultimate class in both power and rank, and that the candidate wasn't to be part of a peerage. Having a peerage on their own was okay. Though the first rule was logical and understandable, the second one was only to stop Graphia or any of the other peerage members of the Satans to gain such a position of power, because only peerage members of the Satans were considered ultimate class and rank. But if a type of election had already been decided, why was Urzichas still having trouble with it? Simple. Well, actually it wasn't. Devil politics were very dirty. There were multiple high-class devils that could vote that gave him their vote, and like other influential devils of the underworld, he had to pull some strings so that none of his enemies could sneak any of their personal candidates into the Satan position, gaining immense power. Just imagining some elders with a Satan under the thumb made him shiver. And now he tried to filter out who he could entrust with being a good Satan that wasn't easily corrupted or under someone's control. And while many devils seemed to fit those requirements, only a few actually did. He looked down at the folder in his hands. This one had passed all his background checks and seemed to be the most logical. He sighed and made the first communication circle of many. It would take a while until he had phoned all of his associates to reveal his decision. Azazel was nervous to say the least. He was in close proximity to the one individual that eradicated an entire pillar family in less than a minute. He knew that this meeting with the man would be different from most that he had. Normally he was one of the strong leaders of a faction, having enough power to compete against most other supernatural leaders in a one-on-one. The fact that most other leaders or individuals he met weren't strong enough to simply beat him without trouble was good because it meant that neither had control over the meeting and both sides were forced to handle it on a logical and practical basis. But this time he knew that he was outmatched by a long shot. There was no doubt that this Issei Hyoudou was strong enough to wipe him out without breaking a sweat, meaning that Azazel would be at his mercy during the duration of the entire conversation. It wasn't fair and he couldn't do shit to make it fair. Hell, even the information he got on the man was close to nothing due to the fact that he lived his entire life in devil territory, never leaving the area. But there was nothing he could do about it, so he had to use all his available tools, mainly his skills at talking, to the absolute maximum. But even though he had a whole speech mentally prepared with multiple diverting paths, he felt like this conversation would go an uncontrollable and uncomfortable direction in a matter of minutes if not seconds. And once again he couldn't do shit about it. So he decided to knock. It took less than 2 seconds for the door to open, and yet things were already spiraling into chaos. What the fuck was Tiamat doing here? Azazel? She seemingly had the same question about him. Hello Tiamat, long time no see. I wanted to know if I could talk with a certain Issei Hyoudou. Tiamat visibly hesitated, which worried Azazel greatly. Didn't you already send someone? What? What? Yeah. Like the white-skinned one. Oh. But those red eyes and pointy ears. Oh no. Honestly looks more like a vampire than one of you fallen. Oh no. And why would you ever send a warmonger to a meeting? Tiamat. She raised an eyebrow at his dreaded serious tone. What? That's Kakabiel. She clearly didn't get the problem. And I'm the one sent to represent the fallen. Her eyes grew wide. Oh. He went rouge a few months ago. Oh no. He has plans of restarting the war between the biblical factions. Oh no. Tiamat rushed into the house, prompting Azazel to follow right after. He just realized that if he would be a second too late, that not only would the Great War restart, but there would be a winner that was none of the 3 actual factions, but more a third, or fourth in this case, party. The door to the living room was slammed open by a panicking Tiamat, who was still followed by the leader of the Grigori. There he saw the individual he had been seeking to speak with, Issei Hyoudou, sitting on an armchair that was in front of a small table with a couch being parallel to him and 2 other armchairs being to the other sides of the table. On one of the said armchairs was a certain fallen he had been searching for what felt like years. That fallen had frozen the moment the door had been slammed open with a smug expression on his face and leaning slightly forward as if he was trying to reel Issei in with no visible success. Issei was completely sunk back into his chair, almost sinking into the foam it was made out of. He had a clearly bored and grumpy expression which made Azazel wonder for a moment why Kakabiel was so smug, even though Issei didn't seem convinced by anything he had said until now. This was supported by the fact that Issei wasn't even looking at Kakabiel, but rather at a random wall not even slightly in the direction of the warmonger. And while Kakabiel remained completely frozen, Issei immediately turned to Tiamat and Azazel. His face slightly lit up when he saw Tiamat, but immediately fell into a much more serious one when he realized how panicked she was. His eyes shifted to Azazel, who immediately felt under pressure when being focused on by the golden orbs of pure energy. Thankfully, the pressure fell as he noticed that Tiamat wasn't panicking about Azazel, having let him follow her so deep into the house, and his expression changed into a slightly confused one, clearly indicating that he was trying to figure out why exactly Tiamat was panicking. But while Issei was trying to figure out what exactly was happening, Kakabiel slowly turned towards the now open door, his face still frozen. When his eyes met with those of Azazel, his eyes slowly widened, and his mouth went from smiling into a deep frown. Neither moved a muscle, staring each other down, both channeling hate for each other, both wanted justice, just was the problem that neither had the same views on what justice was. One wanted to win a war that wasn't fought for anymore and desired to make a mark in history via bloodshed. The other wanted to punish a former ally for backstabbing his old friends for nothing more but a childish need to battle a battle long lost. But the stare down was interrupted when Azazel felt the golden orbs of power seeking his attention, which they immediately got. But the head nod, Issei directed him towards the free armchair. Azazel didn't dare to refuse. After sitting down he thankfully felt Issei's eyes leave him, letting him release the breath he didn't know he was holding. Issei leaned forward, closing his eyes and folding his hands in front of his face. The silence that followed seemingly stretched into infinity. That was until Issei's left eye snapped open and focused on Kakabiel, who was sitting on. The cadre class Fallen stiffened, not knowing how to react. It didn't take too long for him to realize that Issei wanted him to speak. As I was saying. Kakabiel sent a glare towards Azazel, who replied with his own look of hatred. If you were to join me in my quest to eliminate the angels, devils, and… The feral grin made itself onto the warmonger's face, and he once again glanced at Azazel, this time his eyes were filled with confidence and bloodlust. Azazel would never admit that the look had scared him. The Grigori. For a single moment, Azazel's neutral face broke into a snarl-like frown that expressed just how much he had to hold back to not just launch towards Kakabiel. The next instant and he once again looked completely neutral. I would not only give you the entirety of the underworld but also allow you to use the devils, angels, and traitors. Azazel's eye twitched. That we imprison for whatever you desire whenever you desire. We would leave you completely at peace as long as we aren't under attack and just request to have heaven for ourselves, nothing more nothing less. The following silence made Azazel question if Issei had even been listening. Then said man closed his left eye. Another minute of awkward silence. And his right eye opened staring right at Azazel. At first, Azazel had believed that Kakabiel had only flinched because of the sheer power that Issei was radiating, but now he knew why the cadre class had been intimidated. It felt like he was before ultimate judgment. The eye staring right through him was one of a creature that was too powerful to even care about his predators. It did not matter how much he would run, how much he would hide, how much he would struggle if it wanted him dead, he would not stand the slightest of chances. There was no doubt that his entire race could be gone from one day to another if this was the beast's desire. He wasn't even sure if the dragoon gods would be able to stop such a monster in its wake. A shiver down his spine visibly shook him, but he quickly got himself together and started speaking. My name is Azazel, leader of the Grigori, where most of the fallen reside and representative of the same faction. In great contrast to Kakabiel, who not only betrayed us but is now trying to start a war out of selfish desires, we desire peace between all factions. Kakabiel's glare was intense enough for Azazel to notice without even turning towards the cadre class. We don't truly know your standing in this, but from what we have seen from you, your desires are ones of peace and silence, even though you could easily take most of the supernatural by storm. I respect that and thus desire to ask for a peace treaty between you and the Grigori. An angry huff came from Kakabiel that was cut short not even halfway through. And although Issei didn't even twitch when hearing the sound, Azazel was sure that it was thanks to him that Kakabiel had been silenced. We are also trying to achieve true peace between the three biblical factions and others all around the globe. If we succeed, we would be able to keep the other factions from interfering with your life and annoying you any further. Like many times before that day, there was a tension-filled silence that was broken by Issei closing both of his eyes. After what felt like multiple hours for both fallen, he reopened them and turned towards Kakabiel. Extending his right hand. Both fallen looked completely flabbergasted, but Kakabiel regained his smugness from before Azazel's entry and now looked like a wild animal that had its prey right where it wanted. Azazel's heart seemingly stopped. He had failed, not only this mission, not only himself, not only the entirety of Grigori, but the entirety of the biblical faction. In a few days, everything he had worked for would be broken. The books he had written for his father, burned to less than ash. The friends he had made throughout his life, left behind without even a single goodbye. The Grigori he had built up and led for almost his entire existence, broken beyond recognition. This could be his very last moments in the mortal realm before death could lay claim on his soul. The small part wanted to stand up and fight. Never give up and keep going whatever might happen. But what was he supposed to do? His opponent was somebody who killed Satans with ease. Someone that could rush him in mere seconds. Someone that he stood no chance against. Like the rest of Grigori. There was nothing he could do to stop his world from ending as Kakabiel's hand slowly made its way towards Issei's. And for the first time in what probably was centuries. He cried. It was a silent cry that only allowed a single tear to slip through, but he still was crying. The two hands met. Kakabiel felt ecstatic. There was no way he would lose the war with something like this on his side. No weapon could compare. No shield defend. No magic negate. No creature overpower. It was the strongest weapon, and he was now in possession of it. He was the one to rekindle the flickering lights of justice and punish both the pure angels and the dark devils. A sadistically evil smile made itself on his face as he turned towards Azazel, who had seemingly shattered. He was happy. But then. His hand felt warm. He froze. It was not a welcoming warmth to greet him. Nor the warmth of the enemy's blood that would drip from his hands. Neither was it the warmth in his heart that would come up once he had won the war. It was a burning fire. A fire fueled by rage and disgust towering over him and everything he had ever dreamed of. Able to turn the biggest of mountains into less than ash within seconds. And he was its target. The weapon he had tried to tame was an uncontrollable tornado of utter power that had a will on its own. And its will wasn't even remotely similar to his own. He had attempting firing a weapon without a trigger, and now it would go off in his own arms. White flames hungrily coiled around Kakabiel's hand. His expression slowly dropped from the borderline insane smile to a face of utter fear. The white flames grew slowly, eating away at the outer layers of his skin, easily evaporating the dense leathery tissue, as if it was nothing more than foam. Fear turned into pain. And then Kakabiel started to struggle. He tried pulling away from his hand with one swift pull, not even coming close to moving Issei. He summoned a ridiculous number of spears of light, aiming to stop his suffering, firing them straight at the beast's hand, hoping it would do something to ease the insane pain he felt. Surprisingly, he severed the monster's arm. A short moment of relief overcame him as he fell back from his constant pulling. Yet the hand didn't let go of his. Still severed, with both wounds, out of which blood should be shooting out, instead burning in white fire, the hand refused to let his own go, allowing the white flames to expand on his arm. Before he could even attempt to use his new still limited freedom to somehow get rid of the hungry flames, he was pulled back towards the monstrum as its hand reattached itself onto his now regrown arm. The beast's eyes met his own. The world around him grew insignificant as he felt himself shrink in front of the golden orbs of utter and pure untamable energy. He was nothing in front of those orbs. No leader. No fallen. No warrior. No man. Nothing. He felt like the day he was brought into the world by God. Weak, vulnerable, tiny, insignificant. And that last one scared him. To be of no use. To be just a waste of space. To be nothing. But everything the angels were ordered to do was already being done by others only multiple times better. He was nothing more than a burden. Then Azazel fell with many others and he saw an opportunity. An opportunity to be useful. An opportunity to be needed. An opportunity to be something. So he took it. And fell. At first, it was hard. Like the angels before, the fallen left him no place to fit him. Having him be a leader person with no power. Just a man maintaining the image as lower more talented fallen did the work for him. He felt regret for being pulled away from purity for an opportunity that was never there. He once more was insignificant. Then the war started. And for the first time. For the first time in his entire life. He felt useful. He was the one leading the troops. He was the one charging into battle. He was the one announcing victory after victory. He had a purpose and was happy about it. But then. Everything stopped. The fighting. The brawling. The destroying. The ceasefire began. His uselessness returned like it did so many times. Haunting him even more as the one thing holding him together was forbidden from him, and after decades of holding back and forbidding himself from letting go of his desire. The pressure became too much and he broke. And now after multiple months of running free and preparing to put himself back together, he now saw how foolish he had been. How he had let himself be driven by his own fears. How he had never considered that attempting to help was more than enough. How he had always been loved and respected by most of his fellow comrades and that even after his descent into madness, there were still many loyal to him. But it was too late. But that last thought, he closed his eyes and embraced the cold yet burning hot embrace of death. Riaz didn't feel comfortable. Not only were there those who spread theories about her having a hand in causing Razor's demise due to her hate for him and the upcoming marriage, but there were also some that genuinely believed that she grieved for him. It angered her. Even if it was true that she despised him, she never intended for his death and had no control over Issei who had caused said demise. She hadn't known that Razor would show up out of nowhere. She didn't want Issei and him to meet without having a word with the Phoenix first. She could have never predicted that he would not only kill Razor, but the entirety of the Phoenix estate and family. There was no way she could have done anything to stop the destruction of the Phoenix Pillar. Sure, if she hadn't invited Issei it would have never happened, but there was no way she could have known that Razor would show up a full day before his planned arrival without any kind of warning. So why did she feel guilty? Why did she feel responsible for the grief of all those devils that had friends or even family in the Phoenix Pillar? Why was she angry at herself for not preventing something unpreventable? Why couldn't she rest at night without thinking about all those lost due to her failure? The answer was simple. She didn't tell them. Issei remained a secret to Devil Society, and that secret ate her up from the inside. Revealing who had killed so many devils would just cause more death and destruction. Mostly on their side. Staying silent made her guilty for not helping. Speaking out would make her feel guilty for all the deaths it would cause. It was pure and utter torture. And all because of Issei. All because he decided to not only kill her fiancé, but do so in a display of his overwhelming power that caught everyone's eye. And yet she couldn't do anything about it. She couldn't scold him, punish him, anything really. He was just too powerful. It was so unfair. Why did the powerful ones get to decide everything? Every leader was powerful. Zeus, the mightiest god of the Greek pantheon. Odin, the grandest of the Nordic gods. The biblical god, the absolute leader of the biblical faction. Azazel, strongest fallen alive. Michael, the strongest angel alive. And even her own brother and the other two Satans. It was always those with the most power that ruled, never those that had the spirit and ability to rule, but those with the power to. For hell's sake. Even the humans had a better system. Yeah, sure, everything was going fine and nothing bad was happening, but when was the last time that Devil Society had a revolutionary idea that wasn't straight up stolen from humans? The evil pieces had been invented way back before the Civil War, being the cause for it. Nothing. There had been no new ideas since the creation of the government, and that meant one of two things. Either humankind was the only species capable of creating incredible things that would then go on to be copied by almost every faction ever. Or the unchanging government was the reason for why there was no development in society that wasn't caused thanks to another species that mostly didn't even know that the supernatural existed. Brias believed it was the second. The government had to be changed. To be replaced. To be renewed. Yes, that was what Devil Society needed. Brias was going to create a new government, not where the powerful but the talented ruled, where ability was judged over energy. Maybe then she would feel better about being silent about Issei. Maybe they could even create something to lock him away or even damage him. She had made her decision. Saji was a really patient person. At least it was what his parents had always told him. That he was a patient-friendly boy who was ready to help out if needed. Yet it didn't change the fact that everybody had a point where they just couldn't keep going, a point where all hope seems lost with no way out, a point where most would give up. He was close to that point. His searching for the damn phoenix felt like it had started an eternity ago, and he had yet to find as much as a clue. To be fair, the only help he was getting until now was an insane dragon inside of his left arm, whose personality could switch faster than it probably should. He had gone to almost every corner of Kuo trying to find any signs of a big red-orange firebird. He had no idea if the phoenix actually looked like what he imagined it would. After all, Sona was a devil and she didn't even have horns, only bat wings that she could retract, everything else looked perfectly human. From what the dragon had told him, he should be able to sense the phoenix if it wasn't hiding its presence, but even if it wasn't hiding its presence, Saji was so inexperienced with the art of sensing other beings that he would barely be able to notice if he passed said phoenix. The dragon had also told him that it itself could sense from within his arm or something, but even if the dragon had far greater experience with such things, Saji couldn't fully rely on him for the simple reason of the dragon just being straight up insane. He could have passed the phoenix a few times by now, and the dragon could have not noticed because it was distracted by anything really. It was frustrating and eating away at his patient. Thankfully there were ways to recharge his patient. The best one was talking with Issei and Mio, well, more talking with Mio and sitting while Issei just sat there with them. And even though Issei seemed to be more of an extra element of the conversations they had, he was the reason why those conversations even worked. Saji had heard of Issei before as the evil of Kuo, but after meeting him in person, he seemed like a really nice and friendly guy who everyone just stayed away from, with the only exception being Tiamat, who consistently stayed at his side. And while he didn't really talk, it was his sheer presence that calmed Saji and at the same time made him fear that he might be gay. Nothing bad with being gay, just if he was gay, he couldn't have anything with Sona. Sona. Oh, how he missed his princess. She was the closest anyone has come to perfect, and he wanted nothing more than to be hers and hers alone. Sadly, she had left after the phoenix had destroyed something really valuable to her. It frustrated him that he never got the details of what had fully happened, but he was fine working with the basics. And the basics said that he should kill the phoenix. It sounded like pure bullshit. Kill a creature that was famous for the fact that it could not be killed via simple means. And Saji was very aware of that, but he had a method that should, probably, work. Absorption line. His holy gear. No, wait, it's called sacred gear. It has the power to absorb an enemy's energy, and even though he had never tested it, he was confident that it wouldn't be that hard. You seem very confident in your ability to wield my power. Arrogance is a weakness, not a strength. The voice inside his head startled him, making him almost trip over his own feet. Saji still isn't used to a random voice popping into his head and making comments about what he was thinking. Sometimes he wished that he could simply remove the insane dragon from his arm, but then he was reminded by the fact that without the dragon Sona wouldn't even have noticed him, and thus he was in department of said dragon, even if he wasn't fully sane. Oh no. I don't want to hear that from the guy who is obsessed with a devil girl on a way too creepy level. Oh shut up. You aren't even sane. Wrong. I'm just what was it again? See. No you lowly fool. I am not wait what? What neither the insane dragon with memory loss nor the Yandir boy conversing with said dragon realized was that they were being stalked. Stalked by who? By Dante of course. The soul-bound Reaper was no one to laze around, and since Office had literally attached a part of herself towards Ravel, he didn't have to babysit her, while Issei and Tiamat were going around just having fun. Talking about Office, the lowly dragon god's main body was currently seated upon his shoulders watching him do his work and observing Saji rambling with his inner dragon. Normally the prison dragon trapped in the blonde sacred gear would have already shit his metaphorical pants once he noticed the dragon god's overwhelming presence, but Dante had convinced Office to hide her energy so he could do his job unnoticed. Thankfully she complied with no resistance. Saji was actually quite lucky that he was only stalked by the two. If it wasn't for his harmless level of power, the non-existence of his supernatural connections, and his relationship with Issei, Dante would have assassinated him a long time ago. Oh yeah, and there were also the intentions Issei had with him. Something small fell onto Dante's head, making him freeze. It was followed by a few more objects falling onto his head, and when he took one for inspection, it turned out that what had dropped onto him was popcorn. Looking up he saw Office literally devouring said popcorn from a container that she had manifested out of seemingly nowhere. Her astonishing speed suggested that the dialogue between Saji and the dragon was reaching its climax. The climax that would just end with Saji continuing his futile search. Rainer was confused. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. No response. No new orders. No nothing. Her last report seemed to just have evaporated into nothingness. No worries about this Issei guy. No question about Donaseek's disappearance. No commands to go on or change the plan. It was like they have been forgotten. No Azazel was a busy man, but he would never just forget his loyal subjects. Would he? No it wasn't possible that someone like him would ever leave them behind to rot in an abandoned church for no reason whatsoever. But maybe there was a reason. Yes. That was it. Something really important must have happened, distracting Azazel and making him unable to respond to their report in any way. Then why weren't they back at Grigori helping him? Rainer didn't know. Serziches took a deep breath. The day was the day. The day where Falbium would officially be replaced and a new Asmodeus would take the title as one of the four Satans. While it didn't seem like it, Falbium had actually been the most important Satan of them all in Devil Society. Lucifer had the role of leader and head of the species, making the big decisions and leading the devil race towards wherever he decided it shall go. Beelzebub was responsible for the development of new technology and also took the title of head scientist of the entirety of devil kind. Leviathan was required to handle all foreign relationships and also the general mood of devil kind, needing to make sure that everyone was happy with their life. And Asmodeus was everything else. Not only was he in charge of controlling the entire economy of all of devil kind, but he also had to look into all the small things, like city planning, power regulation of the pillars, and all other sorts of things. There was a reason as to why Falbium always slept when he had time to. He never valued anything over his work, keeping himself awake at devilish times just to complete the last of his work. He refused to rest until he was fully done with all of his work. Never leave a single piece of paper for tomorrow or later. To be fair, he didn't really have any other options. In contrast to the other Satans, was it impossible for him to leave a few papers for the next day, as they would pile up and grow to such heights that once it escalated it wouldn't stop escalating. Serziches could not imagine living like that, and he himself already was in paperwork hell. But that was beside the current point. He was in one of his fanciest outfits that took him 1 hour to fully put on, even with magic. On both of his sides were the other two Satans, his close friends, Seraphol and Ajuka. Both like him were dressed over the top, and both also had a cloud of depression around them. Even Seraphol, the cheery, easygoing, happy Satan who only really got angry when her sister was in danger, was silently glancing into nothingness, her eyes dead and cold, her expression stoic and distant. All of them feared taking their seats in front of all the high-ranking devils of their society. Not because they didn't feel ready to speak, but because of what they would see. They would be met face to face with a crowd of people who mostly didn't care about Falbium and whose only reason for being here was seeing who the new Satan would be. If they could, most of them cut this meeting short into just a declaration of a new Satan with no mention of Falbium. It was in their nature. But even with all the anonymous requests he got, he would not drop a speech for Falbium. He refused to just let one of his best friends be forgotten as nothing had happened. He was hoping that not the same could be said about the one he himself has chosen to be the next Asmodeus. Well, sadly not chosen, but rather voted for. He, like all others, had no access to the numbers. That role was given to Mephisto, as he was not only an elder devil, but also a very close friend to Falbium and someone who the Satans deemed to be highly trustworthy. Being the strict man he is, Mephisto didn't give them the slightest of hints of who the winner of the vote would be, remaining completely silent to everybody about the topic, proving once again that he was highly trustworthy. He was a bit frustrated and stressed about the fact that the entire thing would still take until 1400 hours to start, and yet it was barely 1300 hours. A familiar presence entered the grand hall. Normally Serziches would have jumped and immediately rushed towards said presence, catching her in a bear hug and not letting her go for at least 10 minutes. But he hesitated. Not because of the current situation. But because of the aura his little sister was giving off. Anger. Depression. Sadness. Hatred. It was all well hidden, but as her older brother, he could easily sense the feelings that she was harboring. Regret. What? Why was there regret? What did that mean? Had something happened? Was she somehow no, Rias could never do something like that. But then why? No. Serziches, you are worrying too much. Your little sister has an entire life on her own, maybe something happened due to her actions that she regrets. The regret doesn't have to be linked with Falbium's death. Maybe she just has that typical main character regret. That she wished to have been powerful enough to somehow stop those cursed flames from killing so many, even though it was not her fault. There is no way that she has anything to do with Falbium's death. He took a deep breath after finally convincing himself that his sister had had no hand in the extermination of thousands upon thousands of devils. But even so, it didn't feel right to talk to her now. Not only were both of them weren't really emotionally stable enough to talk with one another, but 1 hour was not enough for both of them to just talk. He needed to make time for that, and he would later. For now, he needed to mentally prepare himself for what would happen in an hour and just let the staff lead Rias to her place. Cao Cao was casually strolling through the streets of Kuo. He had no idea why or how, but some of their sources reported that they had heard that someone had felt a bit of the dragon god's energy somewhere around the area of Kuo. It was a very thin and unreliable lead, but the best one they have had so far. He had barely been here for more than an hour, but he was already annoyed for not finding anything related to the supernatural. He looked around the crowd of normal people. All of them weak and defenseless. The part from him wanted to laugh about it and embrace his superiority, but he despised that part of himself. It wasn't even his true self, it was a personality forced upon him by the people who had given him the powers he now possessed. He did not know how they did so, but somehow, they managed to manipulate God's system to give him of all people the true longinus. This combined with the fact that the original Cao Cao was his ancestor, made him one of the if not the most powerful pure-blooded human alive. They had told him that he was superior, that he was a higher being. Back then he had accepted said reality and did as it demanded he does. But then he saved someone for the first time out of sheer instinct. The girl had no significance to the clan who had given him his powers, nor was she powerful in any kind of way, but he still had saved her. And at exactly that moment he had figured out his true purpose. Being a hero. A hero for those who could not fend for themselves, a hero who people could rely on, a hero for everyone who needed one. The weakness that humans had was unfair. It made them more fragile than all other species and caused them to be helpless in the face of any danger. He didn't want that. He knew that however many people he could gather to protect those in need wouldn't be enough. It would never be enough to truly help all. So he went for the next best thing. Trying to make humans more powerful. If the average human would be capable of fending themselves off against the supernatural, there would be no need for him to be a hero. Death rates through supernatural creatures would plummet into the ground like meteorites. He wanted to strengthen the human to the point where heroes were not needed. He would still be there for them, a protector against all the monsters out there, but for now, he plays the great hero that stands above them all to protect them all. He would risk his life for all the people on this street if anything were to attack them right now. A demonic presence entered his sensing range. Cao Cao twitched. Wasn't it for the crowd around him, he would have dashed towards the source to see if the demon or devil was causing problems. If it was, he would immediately proceed to kill it. If not, well, he'll see once he gets there. His walk turned into a power walk and soon after into a sprint, which was fast but slow enough to be considered normal among average humans. He reached a pretty abandoned street with only 2 other people and slowed down as he was closing in on the demon. He turned the corner and was surprised by what he saw. It was another empty street with abandoned buildings to both sides and a single boy walking between them looking for something. At first, he thought the boy to be a young hunter or something along those lines, but he quickly realized that the boy was the devil he had been sensing. And now that he was closer, he also noticed that this was no average devil, this was a reincarnated one. A human whose humanity had been revoked only for them to become a slave to someone more powerful than themselves. The evil pieces. The main reason why he preferred the old Satan faction over the new one. This poor soul was probably wandering the streets as a patrol under the command of one of the two owners of this territory. The part from him wanted to just pull out the true longinus and stab the poor boy through the heart, ending his suffering. But if he did so he might eliminate a source of information. And he could not take such a risk. With silent steps, he walked up to the boy. Something isn't right. Saji immediately tensed when the dragon's word reached his mind. Normally he would dismiss the comment like every other, but this time the dragon sounded extremely serious. And after pushing his senses a bit, he also felt it. The power that felt like suffocating poison that would burn his skin. The power that seemed like it could rip through him in mere seconds if he were to let it. The power he could not compare to, one that greatly outmatched him. Then a hand was placed on his shoulder. Don't do anything. If it wants you dead, then you're already dead, if it does not, do not provoke it. Cao Cao looked down at the frozen and shocked devil. His power level proved just how little chance the devil would have against him, which made him question why this one was turned into a slave. Then Cao Cao felt the sacred gear and it clicked. He was used for his curse. Like he himself, the devil had been prioritized over all the other humans, just for one of those pesky curses that God has given them. Please don't call us. Quite. How did that guy manage to speak up? Normally Cao Cao could keep him silent 24/7, but very rarely he would come out and speak, it annoyed him. But right now, there were more important matters at hand. What are you doing? Do not lie. Saji was overwhelmed for a second before answering. I just was searching for the phoenix. Cao Cao blinked twice and looked at the boy who still had his back turned to him. The amounts of stuttering weren't what had caught his attention, but rather this so-called phoenix. Who or what do you mean by phoenix? Shitori-senpai has been hurt very badly by the phoenix, in an emotional way, and I thought that, maybe, if I could, defeat it, that then maybe, she would come back. Cao Cao took a moment, but soon built himself a picture of the situation. This Shitori person was probably either his master or a person very close to him, it couldn't be a close friend or lover of his master. Cause if that would be the case, then he wouldn't have formulated it like he was doing this on his own accord, and Cao Cao didn't believe that a devil would do such a thing for another random devil. Now that you told me why you are searching this phoenix, can you tell me who or what it is? His voice was calm, but he kept enough authority in it to make it clear to the devil that he still was in full control. This is going to sound stupid but I really have I don't know. What? Then how do you intend on finding it? The devil visibly shrank into himself. I thought that I might find it through searching. I don't know, I just wanted to help her, but I don't know how, so I just went for it, hoping to find it, hoping to help her. The answer genuinely surprised Cao Cao. He had not expected so much of the kid's humanity to remain after being turned into a creature of the underworld. Subconsciously his aura lowered in pressure and his grip lost a bit of strength. I never saw her so sad, so destroyed, so broken. I wanted to fix her, but I barely know how all of this happened. I remember strolling through the park when everything went black, only to then wake up in the student council room with her there. She explained that I was now okay and something more. About that I am now a devil, but then there was this broadcast on TV, I was too dizzy to see what happened, but later one of the others told me that no, the phoenix had killed someone really close to her more. I didn't get out and I didn't want to push them. So I started scouting Kuo for this damn phoenix, as they told me that he was somewhere here. I planned to use my sacred gear absorption line to simply suck out all his energy, even though I never used it before, but even with the little chance I have, I will keep going until I find him. And then I will eliminate him. Cao Cao looked back down at the devil, and their eyes met. So even if you kill me, I will find a way back to eliminate this damn firebird. I will not give up, no matter what happens. I am ready for whatever you have in store for me. Cao Cao was a little bit more than startled and showed it by just silently staring down at the devil without saying a word for quite a while, as his brain needed a bit of time to work through all the information. He sighed deeply as he realized just what the phoenix was revering to. You know what, let's find that guy together, but first, you need to learn to fully use your abilities, without them you are practically useless. Saji blinked multiple times, his bravery and determination retreating to make space for the confusion. You heard me right, we are going to train you. Cao Cao started creating a magic circle. But why? The blue-haired man turned his head back to the devil. Previously I believed that devils are always selfish and uncaring creatures. You're a unique exception, someone who fights for those they love without needing to be asked to do so, a hero, and I can't leave a young inexperienced hero out here on a search that he will most definitely fail. The least I can do is make you strong enough to find what you're looking for. Saji looked at Cao Cao with amazement. He had expected certain death, yet he got something far better, a chance at saving Sauna, at saving the one he loved. He then noticed Cao Cao's outstretched hand, offering him that chance. He didn't hesitate. End of the part 3 here. So that's it for today's video guys. Before you go, just like the video and share it with your friends. Bye.